let's read the beginning of the most famous, this is the most famous part of the Canterbury Tales. I'll read it in Old English or Middle English, and then I'll read it in regular. Wan that April with his showers soote, the root of March hath pierced to the roote, and bathed each vin in sweet liquor, of which virtue engendered is the flower. One Zephyrus eke was his sweet breath, inspired hath in every holt and heath. The tender croppes and the young son hath in the ram his half-course run. And small fowls maketh melodia that sleepen all the night with open ear. Okay, I regret that we don't speak in Middle English. It sounds pretty doggone cool, really. I mean, and I think it would make this a whole lot more beautiful than what we have here. Now let's read it over here. When that April with his showers sweet, the drought of March has pierced root deep, and bathed each vine with liquor of such power, that engendered from it is the flower. When Zephyrus, too, with his gentle strife, to every field and wood has brought new life. In tender shoots and the youthful sun, half his course through the ram is run, and little birds are making melody, who all the night with open eye do sleep. Nature their hearts in every way so pricks. Then people long to go on pilgrimage, and palmers who seek out foreign lands to far off shrines renowned in sundry lands, and especially from every shire's end of England down to Canterbury wind. The holy blissful martyr there to speak, who hath aided them when they were sick. Now, it's a translation, so the rhyming is not exactly perfect, but it's okay. Great, you guys. So we're talking about rebirth. Now think real hard. What all does rebirth have to, how does it all combine in this first section, stanza? What is resurrection and rebirth and spring and being a pilgrim and going to the Holy Lands and all that? How does it all work together? Look at this. Now, I think it's amazing. I'm enthralled with it because here is a medieval scholar. Yeah, he's not even, he's like, what did he do for a living, by the way? Chaucer, we forgot. This is the first moment in history when we really had a middle class. And so his father was this new burgeoning middle class type of person. And he was able to get Chaucer, Geoffrey, into a upper class aristocratic household as a page. And then from that, Chaucer just worked his way up to being the bookkeeper for the king, among other things. He did so much. But that whole time, he was a very contemplative, thinking type of person. He was writing poetry. He probably had heard poetry in the courts when he was younger, but it would have been in French. So he was one of the first to write poetry in his native English, Middle English. Great. So here is Chaucer. He's a medieval guy. And you think of the medieval as muck. I think of it as the dark time. It's not something, hey, when I think back on when I'd like to live, medieval doesn't come up, like not at all, And it's funny because it's interesting because, knights in shining armor, that is used, that's a motif used so often. When am I going to find my knight in shining armor, right? Back in the golden era of Camelot with knights in shining armor. But do you realize what that would be like? It's not a good time. It's nothing to hearken back to and behold as like the top pinnacle of society. What, the feudal system? But here we have a medieval person making this literature, and that fascinates me. First reason is because it's so high level. Look at this. We start off with an image. This first stanza or section, whatever you want to call it, we start off with an image, and the image is of spring. Now, the cardinal rule, the number one rule of writing literary fiction or poetry, not as opposed to commercial. Commercial's different. Commercial's just like meant to be read and enjoyed. Literary fiction is something that is word art, for lack of a better way of describing it. The number one rule is show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. What does that mean? Show, don't tell. So you show with sensory details. And I'm telling you something, you guys, this is the whole trick of good writing. And I mean, I'm not sure how to say it. It takes a long time to study it and kind of understand how to write literary fiction well. I don't think I'm still there. I'm not there. You know, I wish I was. But what you need to do is excise all adverbs. Adverbs suck. You ran quickly. What does quickly even look like? See that? Quickly? What's a way to say something, but it's not a way to show. Back to the wizard. I think good wizards are white. Am I right? Like robes are white with white hair and stuff like that. I don't know. I think that's from Gandalf the White in Lord of the Rings. So you might describe with the five senses the white robe with the flowing white beard with the white hair and the white staff and all that. And then, like you said, maybe he has to cast a spell to do something benevolent for someone else. You never say the wizard was good. I mean, that doesn't even mean anything. Look at what he does here. He's showing us. He's showing us. What is rebirth like? Well, first thing it is, the highest level is probably the rebirth of Jesus for these Christian people, the rebirth of Jesus. And that is kind of the underpinning, the motif that weaves its way through all of this without Chaucer ever invoking it, actually saying it. When that April with his showers sweet. That's a tactile, it's not perfect, but sweet. You can kind of, you can taste it a little sweet. It's like that explosion. It's almost painful. It's so sweet sometimes. With the showers sweet, you can feel it kind of in your mouth a little bit. Drought of March has pierced root deep. You can almost see the water piercing the loam and going down to the roots of these dormant plants. And then the result, the engenderment, is a flower. Beautiful flower coming up. So there we have this rebirth, this resurrection. What was dead is now alive. When Zephyrus, who's Zephyrus? The west wind, the god of the west wind, blows the wind through, spreading the seeds out, knocking the flowers out of the trees like we see, you know, that moment of springing. It's just the seeds are everywhere. Just throw a branch on the ground and something grows, you know. When Zephyrus, too, with his gentle strife, to every field and wood has brought new life. Oh, what is it to be baptized? You come up and presumably what? All your sins are washed away, right? That's another form of resurrection. What about Jesus himself? The Christians say, where he was resurrected. He actually came back to life. And in so doing, as Christians believe, what would they say? Made it okay for your sins. So he washed clean your sins with his sacrifice. Another rebirth. Well, what about the pilgrims going to Canterbury? That's just another type of rebirth. What about actually spring? Hey, it's just a rebirth. So there is this motif of resurrection woven in there. Pretty cool, huh? Not only that, But now he brings astrology into it. Oh, cool, man, astrology. So some of you can help me out with this. Every year, at any time you want, normally say the equinox or say January 1st, the sun, there are 12 constellations. The sun rises into a specific constellation. So like for me, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I'm a Scorpio. I swear I've had people like women, young women, because I'm young and all that, not talk to me because I'm a Scorpio. Well, at least that's what they said. Anyway, Scorpios get a bad rap. But anyway, I'm a Scorpio, right? So that means the sun was rising into the constellation of Scorpio during the time when I was born. Oh, okay. All right. So every year the sun rises on a certain day, say January 1st, into a specific constellation. In this case, it says, the youthful sun hath his course through the ram has run. Okay. I want you to key in on sun. What are the different instances or types of suns? You have the sun, but what other sun? Jesus, Jesus, the sun, the sun. Oh, so now, and even the spelling over here, the tender croppes and the young son hath in the ram his half course run. So the sun is young because it has only run halfway through its course in the constellation of Aries, the ram. Wow. The first sign of the zodiac in the solar year. So you could make a case, if you're analyzing this, you could make a case that the sun also, in a very subtle way, refers to Jesus. You could also make that case with this whole theme of resurrection we've been talking about there. Good. Now here they are. Sir Thomas Becket is this one of the early bishops of Canterbury. And I could tell you the whole story. I'll tell you the brief version. So the king, the Archbishop of Canterbury is like the head priest of England. And that's just known. It's just a known thing. That's his position. With that position comes the exclusive right to coronate kings and queens. Coronate means it's almost like an apotheosis, ascension to the throne. You become king after I sprinkle this oil on your head and put the crown on you. Well, three or four other guys had the audacity to coronate one of the kings. I think it was Richard II, one of the kings, and cut out Thomas Becket. So Thomas Becket excommunicated them. In order to, in the Christian faith, in order to go to heaven, you got to be repentant for your sins and that kind of thing. You got to be, especially Catholic, you got to be, okay, if that cuts you off, then you're doomed. Imagine the just arrogance of that. It is, that happens. So Sir Thomas Becket excommunicated these, I think it was 3 guys. And then from that, the king, there was always like it's just a real hatred between the king and this archbishop. And he said, eventually, just on a flippant, like almost an offhand statement, he says, "Will no one rid me of this pesky priest?" So guess what? Some dudes went and murdered Thomas Becket right there at the altar in the Canterbury Cathedral. And so guess what happened? It's exactly what always happens with stuff like this. He became more powerful, right? He became a martyr. And not only that, but he became a saint. Yep. So in Catholicism, saints, I mean, you're not really supposed to pray to saints, because that's more like polytheistic kind of, but people do. They look to saints for protection. They look to saints for healing, which is Thomas Becket. They look to saints for a lot of things. I mean, there's hundreds of saints. I don't know. Maybe there's 1,000 saints. I don't know. But you know, the most normal example is Saint Christopher. It's like a little amulet you wear, and Saint Christopher protect us, right? So yeah, I mean, so once Thomas Becket became a saint, then people started taking this pilgrimage and going from usually London over to Canterbury Cathedral. And that's the whole story. All right, that's the whole story. They're going to see the holy, blissful martyr of Thomas Becket. Now, if you want to continue with our resurrection motif, what happens when you become a saint? What was dead is now alive in a different way, in a stronger, more powerful way, just another kind of spring, another kind of baptism, another kind of resurrection. It's pretty cool, man. And for a medieval dude to come up with all that, I'm in. I'm in. Okay. Now he talks about there's 29 people. 29 people. They're at an inn. It's like a kind of a hostel, and they have a tavern there, and they have rooms. The host makes this speech and says, "Look, we're going to go tell tales, and I'll just whoever wins." Okay, so you got all that. Now, who does he start with? Who's the first one? Now, the thing is, he's going to go and describe all the people. And this is where it gets fascinating to me. Because, I mean, who thinks of the Middle Ages, the medieval era, with this kind of specificity? He really shows us, not just telling, but shows us. And I think this is kind of the first instance of good literature, I think, you know, because before, I mean, hey, Beowulf is good. I mean, you know, it's all right. And then Sir Gawain and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's got that alliterative quality and all that, but it's still sophomoric, you know, it's not like, but now you get to this and it has a richness and it's just total satire. Like, you know how in British comedies, a lot of times they'll look right into the camera and just say something and you know they mean exactly the opposite. It's irony, sarcasm. A lot of that going on, but it's like this. You laugh, you're like, oh God, that's funny. And then you're like, damn, you're right. You know? So it's comedy to make you think. Mark Twain was the greatest satirist. You know, he's like, always tell the truth. It will infuriate your enemies. It's like you laugh and you go, damn, that's right, isn't it? Okay. The big thing about Chaucer, the big thing about Canterbury Tales is it's mostly satire. He's really making fun of these people. He really is. Like the nuns, the priest, nun. You know, he describes her, and then she's got like she's taken this vow of chastity and all this, and yet chastity and also poverty, and yet she's got a gold necklace and little dogs she serves meat to. You know, so he's commenting on these characters, and he's really doing it to bring some of them down, you know, to debunk them. Okay, so there's two exceptions, the knight and the parson. By most accounts, most people think that the knight and the parson are the only straight characters, the only ones that he's not commenting on to make fun of or to point out their inadequacies. It starts like this. There was a knight, and he was a worthy man, that from the day on which he first began to ride abroad had followed chivalry, truth, honor, courtesy, and charity. Well, I'm sold already, man. He sounds like a great guy. We talked about values in here, didn't we? We talked about core values and how a lot of people really just flat don't have them these days. You know, they might say, well, I'm a Zen Buddhist or I'm a Christian or whatever. But no, I want to know, like, what are the values that you try to emulate on a daily basis? Some people might say, well, I try to be honest, try to be good, but then what the hell does good mean anyway, right? Well, it means to help others. Okay. So you really go around all day trying to help other people? Really? Really? Well, no, but I say I do, right? Okay. But here's the night: truth, honor, courtesy, charity. Charity is helping other people. Courtesy is just what it sounds like. What is honor? By the way, this kind of a merry-go-round in the dictionary. If you look at good, it's like that which lacks evil. You look at evil, that which lacks good, and you just get, you know what I mean? So there is a lot of that going on. To me, the definition of evil is that which is inconsistent with the common good, the public good, what is good for everybody. But that's a different story. Honor is integrity. Honor is doing what's right in all situations, regardless of whether it's right for you, you know. And that's great. So here he goes, and it goes on. I don't need to read all this. It goes on, talks about all the different wars that he has been in and all the places he's been. He has a place of honor and this and that. And so the knight, and his tale is super long, and we don't normally read it because it's just real straight, and it's just what you would think of as a knight, you know. But then there's a son. With him, there was his son, a young squire, lover and lively bachelor entire, with locks as crisp as from a curling press. Of 20 years of age he was, I guess. Of his stature, he was middleweight. That sounds pretty good so far. Wonderfully agile, powerful in a fight. He had served a while in the cavalry, in Flanders and Artois and Picardy, and done so well, and in so short a space, he hoped for favor from his lady's grace. Like a meadow, he was embroidered. What does that mean? He was embroidered like a meadow. What does embroidered mean? But embroidery is like you were saying, stitching, and it's of a meadow, so flowery. So look at this guy. Now we're talking a medieval dude, okay? He's got locks. I think of locks as long, curly, like flowing hair. And they're so crisp. It's almost like he has hairspray on them, and he just put them in a curling iron. He is a sweet smelling dandy, isn't he? And so he's been in the cavalry, and he's of middleweight means he's pretty trim and pretty healthy looking. And he's gone on all these exploits with his father, and he's embroidered like a meadow. Show don't tell. Perfect. Show don't tell. A meadow, one full of fresh flowers, white and red. So he has white and red flowers on his tunic, on his top. Singing, he was. So this guy goes around singing and playing the flute all day. Da, 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 playing the flute. Do, 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 do. Can you see this guy? And he was as fresh as the month of May. You could take that in a lot of different ways. Fresh, what is that? Fresh means not stale, but it also means kind of lascivious. It could have a sexual tone to it. Well, maybe it does, because we'll see what happens in a minute. But short was his gown. So the gown, the tunic, the top is short here. So maybe you can see part of his belly, his midsection. But the arms are both long sleeves, both long and wide. You've seen those big, long, floppy sleeves. You think of medieval, probably. It fits here. It's form-fitting, but then it's like this. It's like bell bottoms in your arms, and they come down low. That was the style. Well, his is embroidered with flowers. He knew how to sit a horse. He could ride. He could make songs and compose all right. He could joust and dance and draw things well and write. And then he loved so hotly, night through without fail, he slept no more than does a nightingale. So what's he doing all night? He's getting with the ladies. So who thinks of that kind of thing? Like in medieval times, that you would have a character like this going around. And I mean, I don't know if one night stands were a thing then, but I don't know. It says this is from a contemporary person who lived during, he said he loved so hotly through the night, without fail, he slept no more than does a nightingale. So he's a fop, F-O-P, fop. It means he is a male who is excessively worried about his appearance, and we might call them a player today. Very rich, very rich. Courteous he was, humble. That's the one word that doesn't really jive with me, because none of that seems humble to me. None of it does. Attentive and able, and carved for his father at the table. Whoever carves the meat holds the highest station. So that means his father is gradually turning over the family to him. It's pretty interesting. Okay, good. Let's come back to the yeoman tomorrow. Let's talk about the prioress. Now, prioress is a head nun. So they are what's called nuns. You're right. They take a vow of poverty and chastity. Chastity means no sex. Chastity means no sex. And I think I told you this anecdote one time, but there was this abbot of priests, of nuns. When the Vikings came, they wanted to keep their chastity, because their chastity is important, because that's their brides of Jesus, and it's unclean and unsin, whatever, it's a sin. And so in order not to be raped by the Vikings, they cut off their noses. And that's where the saying, cut off your nose to spite your face, comes from. Vikings must have been pretty bad dudes. I wouldn't cut my nose off very easily, would you? I don't know. That's just me. This is me talking. Okay. So you think of these nuns. Now, I want to tell you something, and you've probably never heard this before. This is going to freak you out. There is a higher class of nun called an Anchorite. And an Anchorite is a woman who has taken a vow, usually of silence, and has walled herself up in the church. And it doesn't have to be adjacent to the chapel, but a lot of times it is, where she has just a small little window to where she can see out into the chapel, and she devotes her life 100% of the time inside that small little chamber, smaller than this room for sure, 100% of the time in there praying all day. And the life of a nun was tough anyway. They prayed most of the day and had hard chores and labor to do and all that kind of stuff. But an Anchorite, I mean, she has a bucket, a slop bucket. But think about that, they send her some meager food in, and then she sends her waste out, and she lives there for the rest of her life. That's called an Anchorite. Think on it. Okay, so this is the prioress, who is the head of the nuns. And let's see what she's like. Her smile itself was ingenuous and coy. Wait, what? Think about that. What does coy mean? Coy is like playing hard to get, It's like, oh, stop it. What does that mean? It's like, stop tickling me, stop. What it really means is, keep doing that, I like it, but you're playing coy, right? You're being, oh, stop, you just go away, right? That's coy. It's a way of being disingenuine to get what you want. Her smile was itself ingenuous and coy. She had two varying sides. And even coyness in a nun was not a virtue you would ever think of being in a nun. Like coy, like, oh, hi, how you doing? Like it's really a sexual kind of thing. Coy is like pretending not to want someone's affection, but you really do. Okay. Her greatest oath was, by St. Loy. That's what she would say all the time, by St. Loy. And she was called Madame Eglantine. Full well she sung the service divine, intoning through her nose, all seemingly and fair French she spoke all elegantly. Wait a minute. Speaking French elegantly? Wait. A nun? Wait a minute. Okay. After the school of Stratford-Addabau, her French of Paris was not hers to know. Okay. This means that she was pretentious. This was pretentious. She went around putting on airs, speaking French through her nose and going, like pretending to be of a higher class or a higher station than she was. Not the characteristics of a nun. These are pretentious characteristics of a very haughty person, someone who's ostentatious and flashy. Not a nun. Stratford-Addabau would be a lower mockery type of French, not the Parisian French. Stratford-Addabau, England, it's be like a very, very poor accent mixed with Middle English and stuff like that, Okay, at meals, she had been taught well withal, and from her lips she let no morsel fall, nor dipped her fingers in the sauce too deep. Well could she take a morsel and then keep the slightest drop from falling on her breast. Courtesy it was that pleased her best. Her upper lip she would wipe so clean that in her cup no trace of grease was seen. So you can see this very prim and proper, like nun, just, what is she doing all that for? She's overly concerned with her appearance, which is not the qualities of a Christian nun. And so you can start to see the satire. And excommunication is this terribly arrogant thing that we do. I'm going to cut you off from God, right? Well, there was another thing that the Catholic Church was doing back then that Martin Luther, for one, didn't really approve of, and it was selling pardons. So this is a crazy concept. You can purchase a pardon. It comes in the form of a scroll with the Pope's seal on it. And effectively, if you have enough money, you can buy yourself into heaven. What a bargain, what a deal, man. So there's so much wrong with that from the Christian perspective. Because the whole Christian religion is based around believing that Jesus is the Son of God, believing he died for your sins, and admitting that you're a sinner, and asking forgiveness. Those are the things you have to do to get into heaven. That's it. Those are the things. It wasn't pay the church a certain amount of money. And if you do pay the church a certain amount of money, then do you still have to ask for forgiveness, or does it matter? Well, it's just basic corruption is what it is. Now you think about it for a second, and then the real sinister nature of it really comes into play. You can buy your dead ancestors out of hell. Hey, remember Grandpa? He's a real bastard, wasn't he? Yeah. Let's buy him out. Let's do something good for Grandpa. Let's do something good for Grandpa. Let's go ahead and just buy him into heaven for Christmas this year. What, do you want to do that? Yeah, let's do that. You realize how crazy that is? But you could do it. You could. And there's a saying that went along with it. When a coin in the coffer rings, a soul from purgatory springs. That means when you give the church money, you can spring. It's almost like breaking somebody out of jail. Purgatory is this in-between place, but whatever. So this is one of the 95 theses that Martin Luther nailed on the church wall in Germany and set off that firestorm of the Protestant Revolution. Well, okay. So you have a character, a delicious character, called the pardoner. He is a person who delivers pardons. He's like a messenger, but he delivers pardons. Oh, okay, all right, seems good so far. I'm on the translation, and I'm on page 24 of it. If you have it, with him there wrote. Now, with him, this is the summoner. Woo! The summoner delivers summons. Oh my gosh! Now I want you to think about this. A summons is something that the church is a document that the church makes that summons you to go to the church and answer for something. It's like they call them process servers today. They go and serve you court papers. It's like that, only from the church. These two ride together, the pardoner and the summoner. So imagine that. The summoner shows up, but there's the pardoner right there with him. So I'm summoned, but if I buy a pardon, am I resolved? Oh, yeah. See how that extortion scheme works? It's perfect and horrible, right? So the summoner and the pardoner ride together, and it says this: with him, with the summoner, rode a noble pardoner. He is not noble. That is called irony. That is called sarcasm. He's not noble. He's the pardoner of carrying cross. His friend and his peer returned. He and his friend returned directly from the court of Rome. This is something called dramatic irony. It means that we know more than the characters in the story know, because when it says they had just returned from Rome, yeah, well, maybe. And so it says this: he sang out loud, "Come hither, love to me. Come hither, love to me." And the summoner sang a powerful bass round, "Come hither to me." Well, so that begins it, right? So the idea is that the summoner and the pardoner are a couple. They're gay. They're lovers. Okay. Interesting. We're talking about medieval times still here, right? I mean, today I think being gay is like being left-handed. Like, oh, really? Okay, whatever. But then, it was expressly against the Catholic Church to begin with, and Leviticus, thou shalt not lay with another man, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, heck, but how deep you want to go with this? Leviticus says you can't masturbate. Man shall not spill his own seed. It also says you can sell your daughter as long as you do it 2 towns over. Yeah, because you wouldn't want, it's just. Okay. So anyway, the pardoner is with the summoner. And the summoner is this fat, jolly man that smells like onions all the time and has cherub rosy cheeks. And the pardoner is different. The pardoner is thin and cadaverously white, kind of like me. And he has hair as yellow as wax, but smooth, and it hung like flax. It's like a straw. It's horrible. It's so thin. His hair is real thinning, and it's oily and also straw-like at the same time, and it just hangs down. It's like about this, and he's got, his features are just real thin and angular, and he's not a very attractive dude, the pardoner. Never a trumpet half so great a sound. Once again, irony. The pardoner had hair as yellow as wax. Let's see. In clusters hung the locks he possessed, with which his shoulders were overspread. His locks fell down on his shoulders. But thin they fell in strands one by one. But hood to adorn them, he wore none, for it was trussed up in his wallet. He thought he rode fashionably set. He thought he was hey, everybody. He thought he was something. You've met those people who think they're all that, but they're not. You're like, they just show up, hey, like, I'm a wild and crazy guy or something like that, but they're really kind of not. Kind of like that. No filter, no social awareness of oneself. With his shoulders overspread, they fell in strands one by one, but no hood he wore, for it was tossed up in his wallet. He thought he fashionably rode. Disheveled. He was disheveled. That means all just all torn up, his hair all everywhere, and just disheveled he was, save his cap. He rode all bare. such bulging eyeballs. So he had these big bulging eyeballs like a hare. A pilgrim badge he had sewn on his cap, his wallet before him on his lap. So it's very interesting that Chaucer would evoke the wallet, because his main thing is about greed. All right? He had a brim full of pardons that had come from Rome. All right. His voice, he had very small, was like a goat. He had a goaty voice. And with the summoner, he had this, and they, can you imagine these two? No beard had he, or ever looked to have. You ever known I've known men who, even into adulthood, they just don't grow beards. My stepfather is one. I'm going to talk about him in a minute. He was that tall, like 6'8", or was. But he was part Native American, so he just couldn't grow a beard, period, his whole life. But that's different from this guy. He had this very smoothie, no bearded face, and he couldn't grow a beard, and his voice bleated like a goat. And I judged he was a gelding or a mare. And a gelding is a stallion that has been castrated. I judged he was a gelding or a mare. So, without getting too deeply into the dynamics of their homosexual relationship, he was of the more feminine persuasion, let's say. Okay. Which is fine. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just that in the medieval time period, for this to be said is shocking, right? It's like, holy Toledo. And so what it shows you is it really was an era like any other. Like those people, they were regular people, had the same kind of desires and feelings and all that kind of stuff as we do today. Now, Chaucer's not making fun of him for his sexual orientation. He's making fun of him because he's a horrible human being. And it goes like this. The partner he had relics with him. And what's a relic? Just about every cathedral is built around a relic. And it's like, oh, this is a thorn from the cross that was around Jesus's head. This is the spear that was used to pierce Jesus's side. This is, in the partner's case, this pillowcase is the Virgin Mary's wimple or veil. This fragment of a sail was the sail that St. Peter used when he skimmed upon the sea until Jesus summoned him. He had a cross of brass. He had a cross of brass set with stones, and in a glass he had pig's bones. And with these relics, when he had them in hand, some poor parson living in the land, one day he gathered in more money than the parson in a month of Sundays. So he uses these relics to fool people into giving him money, and a lot. He makes more money in one day than the parson does, it says, in a month of Sundays. I don't even know how long that'd be. A month of Sundays would be 30 Sundays. So it'd be almost a year. So 52 weeks in a year, it'd be like 2/3 of a year. It's a long time. So, all right. So, and thus with feigned flattery, his japes made people the parson his apes, made people and the parson his apes. But to tell true from first to last, he was in church a noble ecclesiast. He read a lesson well or story, but best of all, he sang the offertory. For well he knew when the song was sung, he must preach and well tune his tongue to win silver. So he goes places and he'll sell the pardons. Now, some of the pardons it's unclear, but some of the pardons maybe are literally, truly from Rome, but he extorts people by increasing the price and keeping the extra. It's pretty clear that some of the pardons he just makes up. He and the summoner probably summons people, and then they sell them a pardon instantly. What a scam, right? What a scam. Okay, that's the pardoner. Delicious character, if you ask me. Let's talk about the pardoner's tale. He tells a tale of, he always tells the same tale, and it's about, the theme of it is about greed. That's kind of rough because he is the greediest of all of them, you know? And the tale is just so-so. It's about greed and the dangers of greed. It's 3 men in Flanders who are on a search for a killer who's named Death, and they're duped by an old man, and the old man tells them there's an over here at this tree, and then there's gold there. And this is actually called the prisoner's dilemma, or a form of it. They all kill each other for the gold. So the first guy goes and gets poisoned, and then the other 2 good dudes they kill him when he comes back, and then they accidentally drink the poison wine, and they all die. So they all found death, didn't they? But here's the thing. The real problem of it is he tells this story about greed, and then he uses it to extort innocent people. That's called hypocrisy, and it's religious hypocrisy. It's hypocrisy on the highest order. And on that note, let's talk briefly about the nun's priest's tale, and that's a morality tale, and it's about a fox, a rooster, and his 7 hens that are there. Well, the rooster has a bad dream, and then he goes on and on about the importance of dreams and whatever. That's not even part of the tale. I mean, it doesn't really bear any meaning. What happens is a fox comes, and the fox tricks the rooster. And then the rooster tricks the fox again, and it's just and so the whole thing is about the dangers of tricksters or charlatans or salesmen. I say, beware of all experts and true believers. I also say, if someone shows up in a nice suit, I'm talking tie, not pressed, nice haircut, all like decked out, big old smile with a shiny tooth. Hey, man, and just comes up and shakes your hand and is like, I'm here to help. I would like run the other. Ah! Why? Because come on, man. You're here to extort me. You're here to sell me something. You're here to, right? That's a trickster, a charlatan. Beware of that kind of thing. And that's what the nun's priest tale is telling us. The fox shows up and is that way. Hey, man, no, I just want to be friends. Come on. Shh. Well, I'm going to tell you a quick story. Had a student a couple of semesters ago who said he was an Iraqi war veteran, had a family and everything. He and his son were at the grocery store, and this guy, this person didn't work at the grocery store, but this person, they had a bunch of stuff, and this person said, "Can I help you to your car with that? Looks like you have a lot." And my student was like, "No." And he was trying to make sense out of it. He was like thinking, I don't want to live in a world where you can't accept or offer help from another human being. And so you have to guard yourself against people. But doesn't that suck? That we have to live in that world where someone offers to be nice to you and you say no? But it's because of tricksters like this fox and like the pardoner and the summoner. Okay, now let's talk about the most delicious piece of the day, the wife of Bath. She does some pretty cruel things, pretty awful things. But if you look at it from a certain perspective, that this girl at 12 was forced into marriage. And so some of those things she did were she's never known anything but marriage, right? I don't remember when I was 11. She hasn't known anything but marriage, and she was forced into this. And some of those things she did when she was an adolescent, not even an adult, not even a legal adult today or then or anytime. And so we got to give her a little bit of a pass, But here we go. I'm on the translation, but you can follow along anywhere you'd like. Okay, so how many wives does she have? How many husbands did she have? 5. How many were good? Why were they good, though? She's kind of an unreliable narrator, isn't she? Because she says 3 were good, 2 were bad. Can I have your criteria for good and bad, please? Because the good means that she was able to control them. Oh, okay. Well, all right. But the bad ones, they were younger and they were less easy to control. But one of them did hit her, and that makes him a bad guy to me. Anyway, this tale, and I like it because in a lot of Chaucer's work here, the morals are nebulous, just like you're saying about the feminists. It's like up and up and up, the moral sometimes is like, oh yeah, that's good, and then there's even times when the host with other Pilgrim's Tales, the host remarks on it. He's like, I'm not sure that was he says, I'm not sure that was completely moral. Well, okay. So anyway, that happens a lot, and it makes it rich. It makes it more of a rich experience for us. Okay, I want to talk about I want to get right down on the ground here. What is original sin? The church said that women are more sinful than men, more lascivious. Women like sex more than men. Women manipulate men into having sex and commit adultery and all that. It's not my fault, And so why do they say this? This went on from early Christianity, at least through the Puritans. Why? Well, the idea is that, and that's the same reason, at least one of the reasons when women can't be priests. The idea is that because in the Garden of Eden, it was Eve who, I just happen to have an apple. Eve who picked the apple and manipulated her poor, innocent, morally perfect companion into eating it. That makes her the wicked one. And that means women from then on, forever and anon, are the more evil of the two sexes. I know it makes no sense, and it's hard, we shouldn't try to apply logic to it because it's not logical. But yeah. So that's called original sin. And because of that, a lot of this stuff, this book that her fifth husband pulls out is called the Book of Wicked Wives. And it literally is a chronicle of all of the deplorable acts that women have committed through all of mythology and then through the Bible and all else. Wow, the Book of Wicked Wives. That is the most misogynistic thing I can imagine, right? Okay, so how many marriages are allowed for a woman? What do you mean? Well, she asked that question a lot, The thing is, there's no answer. And it gets complicated, right? It gets complicated. I'm trying to get a lot of stuff out of the way. She sets up her ethos, her credibility by saying, I've been married 5 times and I'm an expert. And then she goes on to tell about marriage, right? I want to tell you something. My mother was married 3 times. My father was married 4 times. That's my mom right there. If you can see that, I don't know. But so I loved my mother dearly. She's passed on now, but I mean, we were best friends. I called her every day on the phone and talked to her for an hour a day for more than 20 years. I mean, it was like that. We were good buddies, great buddies, and I valued her advice greatly. But, something happened from time to time. I'd have a rough patch with my wife. We've been married 20 years now. I'd call my mom, and she'd say, you have to do this and this. And it just kind of dawned on me, wait, you've been married 3 times, So, you didn't think about that in your first couple of marriages? I don't know. It's probably not probably not the best thing, but it does cross my mind. Another thing that I love is taking marital advice from friends who've never been married before, or advice about raising kids from people who don't have kids. Okay, well, she at least is an expert on marriage. You got to admit, 5 times, and she's looking for her 6th, isn't she? she's like, whenever the 6th one comes, I'll be happy for it. Yeah. Okay, good. The first 3 were old and rich, and so she basically took them for their money. She makes no bones about it. She uses sex as a weapon. She says, I am, or was, very fair. I was beautiful. I use sex as a weapon. Some of the things that she does, and this is in the vein of a morality play, a confessional, where she's confessing, and the idea is she is debunking the myth of male domination, that women should be submissive to their partners. And you guys, this is not a half-assed kind of idea. It's very true that even all through the Puritans, I've studied the Puritans in depth, and they really did believe that you need to obey your husband. Yeah, women had a rough time. Who were the first ones to be accused of witches? Old, female, widows. So as soon as you lost your man, you were free, prey during the Puritan era. So she's debunking this idea that you have to have a man in your life to be in charge. Okay, so now she says this. I've had 5 husbands I've studied. She says, I will not keep me chaste in all. What does chaste mean? Celibate, no sex. That's chaste. She's making a case here. She says, look, Jesus never spoke on it, never spoke on bigamy and all that. And also, think about something. How many husbands am I allowed to have? They're all dead, she doesn't have multiple husbands at one time. But she says, how many? Well, let's think about Solomon. What about Solomon? Solomon had a harem. The king of Israel had a harem. Thousands of women, supposedly, if you believe the Bible. He had thousands and thousands of wives. Well, what about Abraham? Well, at least 2. He had multiple wives. Many of those people in the Old Testament have multiple wives at one time. A gift of God had he all those wives. So in the Bible, she's saying, on page 183, she's saying, all those wives were a gift from God. So, there we see the hypocrisy working in her favor now. And then she goes on and she says, God says, or the Bible says, or the priests say that it is good to be married. I stay married, So what does she do to her people that she's married to? Well, before that, she gets to that point. She's making an argument that the whole, now you guys, I grew up in the 90s. And in the 90s, it was different. Like, sex was, I think it's reasonable to say it was more taboo or more off limits than it is now. People were more prudish when it came to sex because we had just come off the 80s. And the 80s was all about AIDS, scared the living daylights out of everybody. I mean, back then, if you got AIDS, you were doomed to a horrible death. They didn't have what they have now for it. So everybody was pretty freaked out. They had clubs. At my school, they had an abstinence-only club. You would go and you would take a pledge to your father. The girls would take a pledge to their father and say, I promise I will wait until marriage, and then they'd get a little locket and stuff like that. Yeah, that happened. And so it was a little bit different then. It was more prudish. That was in the 90s. Now imagine in the medieval era. I don't know. Now lots of scholars who've studied this have said, well, look, this was written by a man. I mean, think about that. This is Chaucer writing in the voice of a woman, So a lot of what he's saying is the perception of what a woman would say from the mind of a man. Well, that's kind of misogynistic in itself. So there are just layers and layers of just conflicting statements and knowledge and logical conundrums in this thing. Okay, so she's trying to say that, listen, we are not meant to be virgins. And I'll tell you why. If everybody was a virgin, there would be no more virgins to be virgins. Got to procreate, right? And so we're not meant to be virgins. And she also said God gave us this form and he told us to go be bountiful. Why not? Okay, she's making this case on page 185 in the translation. She says, let me find where I want to start reading. She says, tell me then, to what end and conclusion were made the members of generation? The members of generation? Your sex organs? What are they for then? They're there. We all have them. She says, what? They're there to not use? Kind of a corollary to her argument is we have sex organs to be used. We have teeth like this to eat meat. Now look, vegetarians live a hell of a very healthy lifestyle, and I wish I could be one. So I'm not coming down on vegetarians, but nonetheless, you see the correlation in that argument. She says this, she says, trust me right well. Trust me right well. They were not made for naught. Gloss as you will and give the explanation that they were made merely for purgination of urine, to purge urine, and both are things. So the tale made, but to know the female from the male. It's not just to go to the bathroom and to know men from women. They have a purpose. And she says, as for me, I think they are for office and for ease. It's almost like God gave them to us. There is a great, wonderful sensation that can happen there. That's what they're for. And they're also for making babies and having and urinating and stuff like that. I want you to just stop and think about this. This is medieval writer. This is like a person who lives in the medieval times. And this is the kind of stuff he's saying. This is crazy, right? And you think that those people were just like hobbling around in mud and stuff. But no, they're fully developed people. They have just the same thoughts and feelings and desires and all that as we do. Okay, 30 minutes left. Good. So they're for office and for ease, of procreation, that we not God displease. So look, she's saying, God gave us those things. I'm not going to displease him by letting them go to waste. Okay? So she says that of her husbands, she just clearly comes right out and admits it, that she would manipulate them using her sexual prowess. She would do various things. She would withhold sex. She would get them all riled up and not carry through with it. She would accuse them of adultery namelessly or baselessly. She would do all these things to manipulate them into getting everything that she wanted from them. So we're back to this thing where it's like not very admirable qualities. There's so much wrong with that. First of all, you're going to get married soon? Really? I mean, and then second of all, she says, wait, let me tell my tale. So then she goes on. We talked about the book of Wicked Wives, which feminists have had a field day with that. Like there's tons and tons and tons of offshoots, like, you know, papers. If you find this interesting and want to write your paper about it, you know, like you could, there's many of the titles I've run across in JSTOR and whatnot, the Book of Wicked Wives and all that and everything. Okay. How deep to go? Let me say something here. Before this class, I she's making this case that she was made beautiful, so why not use it? Those are the keys. Those are the strengths that she was given, so use them. I think that's reasonable to me, you know, like if you're great at playing baseball, why not play baseball? But I would say, just like our previous discussions, things start to go awry when you start hurting other people. And that's the key. I think that's the key. That's the hallmark of it all. Her tale, she launches into her tale. And her tale is interesting in its own right. We're back to King Arthur now, right? King Arthur, in King Arthur's court, a knight rapes a young maiden. That's horrible. It's deplorable, right? He is sentenced to death. All right. But, whoa. So the partner is worried about, you know, his wife doing this to him. And she says, wait until I tell my tale. And by the way, the prologue is longer than the tale. Boy, she's talk about a setup, you know. All right. Now, I love this. This is interesting. The knight is sentenced to death, but the women, Guinevere and all them, the women come. And the women say, no, hold up. Let him have a chance. Like, look, if he can go and answer just one question, then we can spare his life. And what is that question? What? Oh, God, we're walking into a buzzsaw here, you guys and ladies. We're walking into a buzzsaw. What do women want? What do women really want? I think it said. What do women really want? And so he has to answer that question. And I think about it a lot. Or I thought about it a lot in context of this. And I want to tell you, before we start all this, I want to tell you kind of one thing that I've had in my history. This thing that I do, this literature, it's really dominated by women. It just is. And many of them are feminists. And so I took many classes with feminists, you know, real serious feminists. Well, I had this one class, medieval women writers, very apropos for this, right? It was in graduate school. And for whatever reason, I can't remember why, it was an essay that I wrote. And I wrote an essay glorifying a writer, female writer. And my reasoning was that she had the quintessentially beautiful female voice. And my reasoning was that she reaches a closeness to her emotions that few men writers can reach. The subjects that she treats are of the heart rather than Beowulf. You know, remember how I said that's porn for men without sex? It's like, and then I killed the dragon and there was blood spurting out like this, you know, and then I stuck him. Yeah. Well, so my point was, it's not that, you know, and it's a closeness to emotion, to the emotion. It's an emotional intelligence, an emotional complexity. I can't remember all that I said. Now I'm looking at these people in graduate school. You deliver the paper kind of like I'm doing now. And I'm watching their expressions as we go. And they're getting more red and more beet red face and just mad and all this. And I'm like getting a little bit scared. And finally I finish and I say, what? I mean, I knew them really well by that time. You know, what? And they said, you can't do that. I said, what? You can't glorify women like that. I can't glorify women. They're like, no. I said, why not? They said, because look, what you said was that there is a female voice and that this writer is the best at it. The truth is that there is no female and male. It doesn't exist. Gender is a made up idea, made up by society to suppress women, to dominate women. Gender is and even biological sex parts. It's just made up, you know. It's a situation, and it's not real. And as soon as someone like you and it was just because I was a man, you know. As soon as someone like you comes in here and says, "Woman," you know, woman, all women, woman. is, and fill in the blank, it doesn't matter if you're saying something good or bad, then the next guy can come in and say, yeah, woman is, and that is inferior. So the solution is that woman is nothing. There's no such thing as woman. There's no such thing as man. It's all just made up. I almost want to cry. What do you guys think about that? I think it's preposterous. I think it's preposterous. And I say that because there clearly is a difference between men and women. And I want to be careful. It's not every man and every woman. You know, that's not what anybody's ever trying to say. It's not all women and all that. But to say there's no difference between men and women is just to not use your brain, I think. I think that I don't want to insult anybody's age, but when you're in your 20s, you're still very, very young, right? I mean, very young. Like, it's hard to make a tattoo. That's a big decision. Like, this is going to be on your body forever. And you make those decisions in your 20s and they end up being SpongeBob SquarePants or something like that. And I can promise you when you're 45, you won't like SpongeBob on your butt. Not that I have SpongeBob on my butt, but because I don't. But you see what I'm saying? Making a lifelong decision when I was 26, that's a heck of a deal. So be sure about it. Any age, I guess. But like, for example, my mom ended up with my stepdad and she says, I love him because he makes me laugh. And theirs was a true love story, I'm telling you. And so it's different for every person, you know, and I think you just need to be very introspective. And maybe some of that comes from having, I don't mean a lot of relationships, but enough relationships to know, you know what I mean? Enough to know what you're after in a partner, because it's hard to know. When I was 26 and I got married, I thought I was old. I did. I was like, well, live this long life now, so I might as well. And now I look back on it and say, man, I don't think you were very old.